Many, many years ago, I met Nigel in Edinburgh, and we immediately hit it off. I loved his music, and he had already read some of my work. And I passed him a novel of mine called Widows that I was then working with Tony Kushner to turn into a play. And I said that I thought it would make a great opera, you know, knowing his work in opera. He agreed, and we started working on that as a possibility of an opera. And for many years we tried to get it made, and it just didn't turn out. The conditions weren't right for it.
The next important thing was that Tina Ellen Lee of Opera Circus, who had had a very happy collaboration with the opera Differences in Demolition, and she suggested it would be a good idea to try and pick up on this relationship.
We talked about the subject for about a year, and through various influences, including that of Peter Sellers, who very gently mentored us in a certain direction, Ariel came up with this beautiful story, Naciketa.
I decided that it might be a good idea to think of something more contemporary and that would be totally new. And around that time, as I was thinking about this, I heard Naciketa, and I felt something stir. I could find a way in which a child like this could go into the world with death as his guide and respond to 3 questions relating to children in the world today. And for many years I've been working with the dilemmas of child prostitution, of children who are soldiers, and of course of the desaparecidos and disappeared. And each of those belongs to a different continent, really. So I slowly began to ponder this and think about it and proposed it to Nigel and Tina, and they liked the idea, and we began to work on it.
There were wonderful moments when Ariel was sending bits of his libretto and his ideas as he was developing them by email, and we were corresponding backwards and forwards. And the pieces of the libretto that contained the singing plants and vegetables and the elephant and the waterfall that everybody dived into and was floated down to hell or down to their death in. And there I was sitting at my computer, the small scale company, thinking, elephants, vegetables, plants. It's something will work out by the time the final production happens. But the exciting thing is not to close your mind down to any possibilities.
I love suspense, I love tension, I love mysteries, I love thrillers. I mean, there's something about thriller, it's like a moral thriller in some sense, where each time he's put a larger challenge, and the audience cannot possibly imagine, I suppose, that an elephant is going to come to the rescue and come singing, or that the plants are going to start coming out of the ground and start telling them that they have to, the meal of the last judgment, because that's the only way you bring back the dead, right? That you don't bury your own dead, you bury somebody else's dead, and therefore your dead are also going to be buried, and therefore we all bury each other, you know? That's the burial of love. And it's very much related to an evolution that I've had in relation to my own spiritual awakening. I have read much of Rumi and thought much about forgiveness and much about how you create peace in the world. You don't create peace, you are peace, you become peace. And you know, if I don't live that in my art, then where else will I be able to live it, except of course in my life if I possibly can. So it comes from learning a lot about suffering and about going against the passivity of suffering, but at the same time accepting the screams of the world, which we just heard, right?
The idea then was to have a workshop where I would try to make some first musical reactions to this text.
You can hear that there's a kind of canción hiding behind this somewhere, and
I can hear it.
But it will be beautiful, and particularly with guitar rather than piano.
It will be governed by the same old laws, poor things. I have the impression that the music that goes there should be more, let's call it Kurt Weill-like.
I'm in artistic chewing gum. I'm taking this chewing gum, I've chewed it,
Right.
and then we stretched a little, which is the song, which is taking, you know, this world of Nueva Canción a little further, and then I pull it, and I pull it, and I pull it. And the problem is that if I try then to sort of play with it too much, it snaps. I can't get into a kind of cabaret beat or anything at that point, because the link to that is in the piece of unstretched chewing gum. That's where it is, and that's what's going to turn into the, you know, the more driven rhythmic work.
We've been workshopping with a number of singers from the company at the Claw Studio, Royal Opera House. Again, they've been hugely helpful. And this beautiful, joyful, mystical, mythological piece of theatre is beginning to appear. And I tell people the story of it, and everybody says the same thing. It's about hope.
As you know, this opera moves through different places, and I don't want to be a musical tourist, but those of you that know me know that I work quite a lot close with African musicians, Indian musicians for a long, long, long time, and I've kind of used that experience in the music.
All right, ready, he's all ready. Can I take him now? Will he come with me? He's here on my list, his time is ending. The girl, did she do it? Tit for tat. That was my plan, if you got him to dance, that she would kill him like a rat.
I have the opportunity to work with a great writer, and I'm also aware that this he produced, this text, with a very specific energy, that there's no way of going back to where that energy came from. It came, it expressed itself. What we have to do now is look at ways in which it can be honed, directed to make sense. A couple of big questions now. I think one for the librettist and one for the composer. For Ariel, the librettist, is the question that we have a lot of words, and it takes time for words to happen in music, and we have a natural threshold, which is the time in which a piece of music theatre opera can exist. It's more specific, 2 to 3 hours at the most evening. Otherwise, we're on to a different thing. The multi-evening, ring cycle, matinee plus evening, whatever. And all of these things are possible. But we need now to look at this fantastic libretto from the point of view of how we can possibly tell its story in this short space of time.
For me, there's so much text that it doesn't allow the music to say anything. You say it all in the text, and there's not enough to be said, and not enough space for the music to say it as well. So it feels like there's nowhere for the music to go, because it's trying to serve a lot of text.
Is it generally that you do the libretto first and then you have the music? Or? I mean, I think it depends on the libretto, of course.
It happens all sorts of ways, right? And there is a solution to this. Definitely, this will happen. It's just that this is a little crossroads for it.
And today, when we read it, I again found more things. And now, when it was sung, a series of questions have come up, which I think are very essential for the future of the direction that this will take. We're basically going to have to decide whether the text can be pared down enough to make it into let's not call it traditional opera, but an opera where the music is going to convey things that the text cannot.
The solution to my problems at the moment with the opera lie either within or out with the language of music. It is a language that takes essences of other traditions of music of the world other than European and Western, and attempts to look forward within those traditions to what would be the equivalents of modernism. The normal way that people talk about art and music is that modernism was a silly irrelevance and a mistake, and that what really counts is roots, tradition, traditional culture, the canon, and so on. And this is a hopeless argument. It denies the world we live in. What I've found in wandering around the world working with musicians is that there is a natural modernism in all cultures at the moment.
You will grow cold before I go.
Every culture is searching to reconcile their thoughts, feelings, and technical material with the sensations of living in the world we live in. So there is an Indian modernism and there is an African modernism. Not the same as critics in newspapers here describe modernism. It's something different. It is an accommodation, an adventure, a way of dealing with the experience of our time and the materials we inherited from art. And so this opera works with those kinds of modernisms.
When Nigel speaks to me and when I speak to him, we understand what the other is saying. And by this I mean we have been through the fire separately, but together in the same century. Each of the journeys with death we have taken. And we have taken them not only as human beings and as human rights activists, but as people who believe in the power of art to heal, and as those who have asked questions of art, which, while celebrating art, is also suspicious of an art that does not engage with the real human beings of our time. And therefore, when Nigel says something, he doesn't say it because he wants to defend his territory. It's because he's thought about this very deeply, and I have too. And because that's the respect that real artists have for one another.
Over the years, the work of Opera Circus has, I suppose, deepened. It's become more concerned with the stories that it's telling. I'm not only working with two great artists, I'm truly great artists. Sitting with them at a table, listening to their conversations about how their work is going to develop together is inspirational and deeply moving. But it's not just their artistry, it's the fact that they're both men who have spent their lives working for human rights, actively working for human rights, and still do, particularly with children. And to be working on a piece about a child, a boy child, trying to solve the ills of the world by asking death questions and then using music as a possible force for hope is something quite exceptional in my life.
Not many people take that same path as Nigel has taken, because there are not that many people who are as equally engaged in human rights and in civil rights and in politics, and at the same time are artists, let's go with the vanguard, This mesh, which is a wonderful mesh of the modern soul, it is the form of the modern, is that, isn't that frequent. And so to find somebody like Nigel to go with me, or for me to go with him, is just an enormous gift. So whatever's going to come of it, it's going to be beautiful.
Will we have some peace? Oh,